Today I want to talk about ego. Now, the word ego has a bunch of connotations surrounding it, and I'd say majority are pretty negative. Now, ego, pride, being one of the deadly sins, arrogant, cocky, right? These are the kind of words we're associating with the word ego. And majority of my life, I actually subscribed to that way of thinking too, because I was a naturally boisterous, pretty confident, outspoken kid. So my mum would always tell me it's not good to be ego. You should be humble, bring yourself down, right? And she'd teach me stories from the Prophet, peace be upon him, for example, of how he was so humble. It was only after studying my own research did I come to a different conclusion. See, the conclusion I've come to today is I think everyone's got an ego. I think me, you, watching, we've all got an ego, but I think the word's been hijacked by the connotations of being cocky, being arrogant. We all have this part of us internally that would like to have our achievements acknowledged. Now, you can go about it in a cocky way, in an arrogant way, but I don't think that's ego. I think that's you being an arrogant, cocky bastard. You having an ego just means you've got enough evidence to prove this current self who achieves these things is me. So it's not an ego. I'm not putting on an ego. I'm not putting on an act. I am who I say I am. The evidence shows it. So the conversation really is, how come the word ego has been hijacked, and how can we reclaim the word so it benefits me and you? The first one being, if your ego's unchecked, right, it's delusion. So now we have an unchecked ego. We've not really done enough self-analysis to do the work and implement to reclaim this word, to reclaim our sense of confidence, really. That's all I think it is, okay? Ego is being confident in oneself because you have value to provide, and also you're very comfortable in getting value from others, getting feedback, getting advice, because you've checked your ego. So now if you have an unchecked ego, you're too prideful and you won't be able to take advice or feedback from anyone. Once you've checked your ego, that's when you're happy to, for example, put a video on the internet and welcome criticism. So you want to make sure that this thing here that we have, ego, this stack of undeniable proof that you have in the mirror, does it fall into and agree with and back up the view and reality of yourself that you're putting out there? So if you say, I'm a confident man, I run my household, I like the traditional lifestyle, my wife should listen to me, right? You want that. That's the reality. That's your worldview. And your ego believes that you should achieve and live that reality as well. But in reality, because you've got an unchecked ego, no one's actually called you out on it. In reality, the proof is, in your daily life, the truth is, you haven't got much proof. You just do the bare minimum. You just go to work, come home, sit on the sofa, watch a few TV shows. If you've got kids, maybe you play with your kid for 10, 15 minutes, then you go on your phone, right? You eat dinner, unhealthy dinner at that, go to sleep. Where are you running the household? Where are you showing that every day you're actively trying to be better? And then you wonder why you've lost the troops, you've lost your household, right? And again, that's an ego thing. I know there's plenty of guys who they're angry at the world. Why don't I get what I want? But it's because you've got a big ego, right? Alex Hormozy talks about people fall into different categories, and one being lazy and one being arrogant. So it's either there's work to do, there's improvements and stuff you must do, but you're just too lazy to do it. But you still won't change your ego. So the self that knows I'm meant for more is dying every single day saying, this ain't my life. But your lazy version just accepts it and say, listen, I can't deal with the work. And then you've got lazy and the version of you that wants better, right? Your unchecked ego. And then you're just unhappy with life. The second is arrogant. So the guy who thinks he knows it all. And that's when you've just got too much of this, too much ego. And you're unable to take feedback. You're unable to perform iterative loops because you're not interested in doing improvements and making improvements and seeing progress. You think you've got it all figured out. You think you're Danny Big Bollocks. And that's to your detriment. So again, how do we train this now? You might feel like you're in one of the two categories, leaning towards lazy or leaning towards arrogance, Regardless, let's kill that, because they're the two variations of ego that have the negative connotations. Being lazy, being arrogant. That's what makes this word ego a bad thing. I'm saying if we rub out this red section here, this is a good thing, and I think we should all have it. We should all have ego, because we already do. But I want to reclaim the word and simply define ego as what can you offer? Become undeniable. And so when you look in the mirror, this is backed up. This is validated. You're allowed to have a little bit of ego, because it's that same ego that will push you to continuously do better. And why I frame it and center it around value is because the more value you can give, the bigger your ego gets. The bigger your ego gets, the more value you will give. And it's an endless loop of positivity. So see how we change this word ego, something that was so negative to begin with, into something that can become so beautiful. Now, the second thing, or the follow-up part to this, I should say, is this all comes from God. Okay? So when you're achieving all these things, and you're going through that positive loop, you're giving value, getting value, giving value, getting value, then you need to realize that it's only through God that you're even in this position. So depending on how much of a threshold you have to give away achievements, you can do this easier than others. We know all good and bad comes from God, right? But as humans, we have this weird thing where we're not prepared to give flowers where flowers are due. What do I mean by that? How much of the good in your life right now are you prepared to say isn't because of you, but because of others or because of God? Like, how much of it are you willing to say, like, this is a great thing about my life, but it wasn't me who did it? And then also think about how much of the bad things in your life you're also prepared to do the same. This wasn't me, it's that from there. Okay? So life's going bad. Are you this sort of person who goes, God, why are you putting me through this? When things are going well, are you also saying, oh God, thank you for putting me through this and giving me all of this? Are you doing that? It's to a point in your life where you realize, regardless of how much work you do, if we subscribe to your risk is written, God's written how much you'll ever make in your whole life. So that also means he knows how long you live. Because then we've got that equation of lived 80 years, made accumulatively 1.3 million, for example. I don't know. Then you can do the maths, figure out how much of a productive person, were they successful, whatever metrics you want to get. So if you subscribe to that, then there's not much you can do. You can't beat Father Time, and you don't know when you're going to die. Okay? So all you can do is just turn up every single day. Because God's told you, you're in for a certain amount in terms of time and money. So there's nothing you can do. So the same way you can't speed up next week, I can't speed up the calendar, I can't speed up time because I know God's in control of it, then I also can't speed up my risk. It's written for me how much I'm going to get and when I'm going to get it. So it's not about I don't believe it exists. It's not about sit back and don't do nothing, because then it's the same with your time. If you're sitting back and doing nothing, waiting for next week, then you've wasted a week. So at the same time, you can't sit back and do nothing and hope money lands in your account, because then you waste productivity and output. So it's not about wasting, it's about understanding as you're doing the input, there's nothing more you can do. Just do and live. Just do it. Once time unfolds and your consistency actually starts to pay off, that's when you've got enough evidence to show that you're competent. And then it allows you to have an ego because of evidence. So that's it. That's my point. Because someone asked me, they DM'd me, and they said, make a video about ego and how it can affect someone, especially when you're on self-improvement, trying to become successful. And I believe ego is not such a bad thing if you've got evidence to back it up, and it's a checked ego and one that has a spiritual frame attached to it. If you're not talking about God when mentioning ego, then you fall into sin, because pride is a sin, right? Whereas if we're keeping ego in the theme of God, I believe it can't be a sin. It can only be something that is pushing you towards doing better and eventually getting to heaven, right? That's the whole point of it all, boys. Listen, if you enjoyed the video, like, comment, all jazz, and we'll see you boys on the next one.